This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Welcome. Episode 414 for May 2020. Welcome. I'm Marguerite Kenner, your guest host for this episode and former editor of Cast of Wonders. These days, I focus on my role as Cast of Wonders publisher alongside Alistair Stewart and venturing into the wonderful wide world of streaming. Check out EA's Twitch channel for bedtime stories and casual video game chats. Every so often, Cast of Wonders brushes off an episode from the back catalog to give the Encore treatment and to bring it to the attention of the current audience. We want them to have a chance to experience the wonder we felt the first time the story was broadcast. Our Encore episode for today is Flowers for the Dead by Jamie Mason, a two-part episode which originally aired about 6 years ago on August 24th and 31st in 2014. This episode has a content warning for predatory behavior and abuse. Remember, you can always skip an episode or come back to it later if now isn't the right time. The full text of the episode is available online. Jamie Mason is a Canadian author of dark science fiction and fantasy, whose short story fiction has appeared in On Spec, Abyss and Apex, and the Canadian Science Fiction Review. He's a member of PEN Canada and a signatory of the LEAP Manifesto. He lives on Vancouver Island. The narrator for this story is Paul Cram. Paul is a scrappy actor whose characters in movies always seems to be the one that dies. His latest role in Anniversary has him awake at night seeing things that no one wants to admit are happening. While Paul still considers his voice to be somewhat new to the world of audiobooks, he has a few full-length novels now under his belt. When not acting, he can be found out in the woods of Minnesota, arguing pop culture with his little brother. And now, we've a tale to tell.
Flowers for the Dead by Jamie Mason, in memory of Kimberly Proctor and Taisha Jones. Read for you by Paul Cram. Out the windows on the left, you'll see the recent construction across the tops of the factory and high-rise buildings where the more powerful infernals have established themselves as a kind of informal aristocracy. Originally called Morningside, this neighborhood was abandoned when the factory closed. But when our city passed laws regulating the infernals, many moved here because of their restrictions onto employment, welfare, housing, and healthcare. The majority live at street level in poverty. High crime rates, addiction, and violence remain ongoing concerns among this population of supernatural beings. Kyle transforms his 37th cigarette butt into a geranium as Sick Willie talks to the police. Oh, yeah, she slummed around with us. A lot of rich kids do. Come and walk on the wild side, spend a night in the shelter before running home to Mom and Dad. Figured she was no different. Oh, she's different, all right. Harriman, the cop, flicks an irritated glance at Kyle as the geranium drops to the sidewalk. Different enough to wind up dead. She was a nice kid. The murdered ones usually are. When was the last time you saw her? Kyle remembers. It was night before last at the park where they went to score dope from a grower with the power over earth elementals. They watched him stick a few seeds in the ground, in cant, and 5 minutes later, hand over a bag of fresh, rich buds. Kyle, Sick Willie, Trad, Griffin, and Kimberly. The new girl. The rich girl. The dead one. How was she murdered? Magically, or... Think I'd be slumming around here if she wasn't? Harriman casts a disgusted glance up the sidewalk. A crowd of blank-eyed pedestrians shuffle through the streetscape of bars, laundromats, the word gym poking out over the sidewalk in filthy red letters. Typical, sneers Sick Willie. Only time we ever see you guys around here is when something goes wrong. And even then, it's only just to drop in and remind us of our place. Careful, Willie. The cop's hand drops to his utility belt where his platinum cuffs glimmer in their leather case. Wouldn't want to go to Foulgate, would you? Ever hear what they do to little fluxers like you there? Oh, you guys are real popular with the prison bulls. You get to do the same job there that you do out here on the street. Except you don't get paid.
At least I'm free.
Sick Willie's smile is a pantomime insult.
I don't take orders from anybody.
You call what you do being free. Harriman deflects the slight with a perfunctory laugh. Was Kim alone or did she bring a friend? Girls like to travel in pairs.
Alone.
She stay at the drapery?
Yeah, we all sheltered up that night. It rained.
The cop produces his notebook, writes. Was the cardinal there?
Nah, one of the siblings was in charge.
What did you have for dinner? Harriman produces a silver cigarette lighter, a custom item emblazed with a stylized police badge, and begins tapping it against his notebook cover. Shepherd's pie. Kyle volunteers this not to help Harriman, but to bring the heat off of Sick Willie, because Willie gets enough heat just for turning tricks. You're testing us to see if we're telling the truth, yeah? Bet you already spoke to the cardinal. The cop frowns. Why you keep turning cigarette butts into geraniums, Kyle? 'Cause it's pretty. I could run you in. Gratuitous use of magic, that's still on the books, you know. There's a law against making things pretty? Kyle does not yet know what kind of magic will be his for life. But lately, his gifts are manifesting as things of beauty. Using the power of his mind, Kyle twists fast food wrappers into impromptu telekinetic sculptures. When he has strong emotional experiences, he can cause traffic lights to dance in random patterns of red, yellow, and green, or cause clouds to assume the shapes of animals and splotches of color to appear on the brick walls of alleyways. He does this automatically now, subconsciously transforming the environment in which he was born and raised, the streets of Nightside. The law, Harriman is saying, isn't against beautification. It's to prevent infernals like yourself from using your abilities to unfair advantage. That's what got you guys into trouble and restricted to Nightside in the first place. That's the law, and it's my job to enforce it. That more important than finding Kim's killer? The words pop from Kyle's mouth before he has a chance to think about them. The cop's eyes narrow. Got any dope on you, kid? No, Kyle says truthfully, because tonight Sick Willie is holding. So Kyle turns out his pockets and places the contents on a nearby doorstep. These consist of a pencil stub, a folded scrap of paper, 2 condoms, a half-eaten chocolate bar, 2 guitar picks, a book of matches, a half-empty pack of Marlboros, and a cigarette butt, which he picks up and transforms into a geranium. Harriman makes a dismissive gesture, coupled with a muttered whisper, "Go ahead." And Kyle gathers up and repockets his stuff. The geranium he lets fall to the sidewalk to join the pile of others beside the cop's shoes. So, the drapery. Harriman fiddles with the lighter. Any of you sleep with her?
Get away!
Sick Willie is, in addition to mostly gay, horrifically shy.
Besides, they always make girls sleep on one side of the gym and guys on the other.
But you said there was another girl there. Harriman flips notebook pages. Trad. Was that her name? Did she sleep with Kimberly? Sick Willie is disgusted.
Trad is 14.
The cop's eyebrows lift. Oh, so you're letting underage girls run around with you. Nice. She bum any cigarettes? This last is directed at Kyle. 'Cause if you give her any, you're breaking the law. No, I didn't give her cigarettes, Kyle smiles. But I turn my butts into geraniums and give them to her. Does that count? Harriman ignores this. Where's Trad? His tone is bored, peremptory. He expects them to know. He expects a prompt answer.
No idea.
Sick Willie's gaze slides towards the street, toward the thickening crowd of potential customers picking up in the evening's flow.
What am I, her mother?
You know her mother? The emphatic no hardens on a frown, a squint. The cop's attention travels from Sick Willie to Kyle and back again. When he receives no response, he taps his lighter on his notebook, waits for the nervousness of one or the other boy to drop, and when it does not, he flips his pad shut. "We're not done. You ought to know that. I'll be back." Harriman pockets his pad, smiles humorlessly. "We're gonna catch the psycho who did this." "You never told us," says Kyle, "where she was found?" Harriman stares for a long moment. Kyle is not clairvoyant in the slightest, but he senses the cop is crossing him off his list of possible suspects. Because Kyle asked a question the killer would not think to ask. "She was found in the underpass, cut up real bad and partially burned. Somebody poured gasoline on her afterwards and tried to set the body on fire." There was a long pause after this. Kyle experiences that feeling of world's ending you get after hearing thunder. But there is no thunder, just silence in the sky darkening above the rooftops, and that weird shimmer of incomprehension you get when you hear that someone you know has died. He swallows and says, "That's bleak sick." "She was 17. The cop turns to go. For the next quarter hour, there is a lull in pedestrian traffic. Willie and Kyle do not speak. The streetlights flicker to life, not until cars begin running with their lights on that the pedestrians return. Sick Willie makes ready to start fishing for Johns, and Kyle resumes scanning the sidewalk for cigarette butts.
A dozen egg rolls and an order of pineapple chicken, some beef chow mein too, one order, and 4 Cokes. My name? Sebastian. My callback number? It's...
Sick Willie squints through the gloom to read back the payphone's number to the cashier.
We'll pick it up in 15. Thanks.
He hangs up, waits. 1 minute later, the phone rings. Sick Willie answers.
Hello, this is Sebastian. Did I place an order with you? Yes, I did. See you soon.
He hangs up, steps out of the phone booth, and leads Kyle and Griffin into the alley behind the restaurant he just called. The old Chinese man who runs the place got so tired of people scavenging in his garbage that he paid a fool to put a hex on the dumpster, where he chucks unclaimed takeout orders. Fortunately, Trad is the best hex breaker in Nightside. But Trad is late, so they wait. Kyle leaning on the wall to light a smoke, Griffin elastic banding his long dark hair into a ponytail, and Sick Willie glancing between the restaurant's kitchen door and the nighttime fun parade passing the alley's mouth. Hey, Griff. Slightly stoned, Kyle is reminded by the sputter of his igniting match. Some sick scradger cut up Kim and doused her body with gasoline to burn it. What kind of bleak sicko would? Not an infernal. The realization dawns on Kyle the moment Griffin speaks it aloud. Why would an infernal use gas?
Casting a fire elemental? Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Sick Willie, still in girl form from his last trick, narrows and slides his mascaraed eyes from Griffin to Kyle.
For most infernals, anyway.
Yeah, Kyle. Griffin's grin, as he gets into the spirit, is pure mean. Figured out your kind of magic yet? Like Sick Willie, Griffin already knows his gift, and as if to rub it in, he sweeps the air with a clawed hand. The limbs aura ripples in the sorcery, accelerating Griffin's blows with the strength of tiger's claws, rotating knives in avalanche. Griffin is a fighter. Sick Willie is a hooker. Trad is a hexbreaker. And Kyle? I'm an artist, he says quietly. The steel door to the restaurant kitchen squeaks, and a harried man in an apron emerges in a spray of steam and loud Chinese voices. The door doesn't even reach the outer edge of its arc in the time it takes him to cross the alley and lift the dumpster lid. He barks a comment over his shoulder in Chinese, still absorbed in an argument with a coworker as he drops a takeout bag among the trash. Then he lets the lid fall, crossing the alley in 2 return steps to disappear back into the swirl of dish clatter and steam. The trio of nearby kids unnoticed as the door falls shut behind him. Did you know? Griffin speaks quietly. There's a Chinese restaurant in, like, every city in the world, even Nairobi.
Yeah, but how many have one of those on their dumpster?
Sick Willie jerks his chin at the small, alert, pterodactyl-like creature perched on the corner. The hex swivels its bony head toward Willie, eyes rolling like glistening yellow marbles in their slanted sockets. It hisses, shaking reddened wings.
Scratch you.
Sick Willie gives it the finger, and the hex abruptly vanishes, no longer visible. The curse nevertheless lingers, skulking the shadowed base of the dumpster like a croc in muddy shallows. Where the hell is Trad? Griffin flicks an irritated glance at the digital time display on the building across the street. 10:30 p.m. I'm hungry.
Griffin.
Sick Willie's form fluctuates between male and female as he spits, gestures to where the hex was last visible.
Think you could hit that scratcher?
Funny, Griffin snorts, like I want my life to become an endless series of catastrophes.
Well, Trad ain't here and she's the hex breaker. What the hell? You expect me to offer it a date?
A date? The idea appeals to Kyle. A variation of it welling up from within the folds of his artist's soul. He holds an image in his mind, the hex, as it appears in physical avatar. The sharp, elongated skull, the reddened wings, the narrow slanting eyes. And he softens it, adds a touch of green, a few curvaceous details. The wings he makes taper delicately into dainty claws. Kyle draws the image toward himself, willing it into existence, and opens his eyes to see a smaller, more feminine version of the hex preening itself on the railing of the kitchen steps. Holy cow! There's another one! Before Griffin is even finished, a cloud of smoke begins boiling around the dumpster's base. A screech rips the air. The dumpster hex fades into visibility on its old perch, bony head swiveling back and forth, and wings twitching in obvious excitement as its glistening eyes lock onto the female version of itself. The hex unfurls its wings, ungrips and regrips the dumpster's edge with its gnarled claws, and emits a frantic shriek for attention.
Look,
Sick Willie giggles.
It's horny.
The female hex abruptly stops preening, swivels her eyes left and right, and then leaps into the air, leathery wings beating once, twice. Then she is hurtling full tilt down the alley. The dumpster hex screeches after it, as if begging her to stop, then glances around guiltily before taking off in pursuit. Sick Willie and Griffin watch it disappear into the shadows. Howling and squawking, they exchange a look and turn to Kyle. I just thought, what beautiful would look like to the hex. Kyle scuffs the pavement with his sneaker and gestures after the disappearing birds. And that's what came out. Wild. Griffin blinks around a curl of cigarette smoke.
Come on,
Sick Willie snarls.
Let's.
Rather than finish, he marches to the dumpster, grasps the lid, and pushes it over his head until his elbow straightens. He examines the contents, and his face whitens. Any chow mein? Griffin elbows Willie aside, then freezes. Kyle joins them. Reaching up through the rounded trash bags are the charred arms of a human being. Unnoticed by the Chinese kitchen worker, the arms' blackened fingers remain clawed in their final desperate grasp at life. The facial skin is tight around the contours of the skull, eyes caverns glaring as if in memory of the flames that boiled the eyeballs from their sockets. That portion of the skin garment still recognizable is a flimsy parchment yellow, blackening as leakage from the bags smears the ashy portion of the rest. Griffin spins and vomits. No! Sick Willie's face twists toward nausea. Trad, whispers Kyle. Amongst the swarm of first responders and deafening murmur of bystanders, the thump of ambulance doors and clatter of stretchers, amidst the gruesome sight of Trad's cremains being fished from the dumpster by cops in hazmat suits, and the swirl of glaring red lights.
Man, Don't you have anything better to do?
Sick Willie shakes his head, but hands over his laminated red card, which reads TF, Fluxer, anyway. Harriman examines it, notes the expiration date, and hands it back. I gotta renew mine. Griffin's tone is apologetic as he proffers his card, which reads TQ, Quanster. Better do it soon. Harriman pushes a hand, license clip between the first two fingers, back at Griff. His ever-present silver lighter comes out as his eyes pin Kyle. Yours? Don't have one. Kyle mumbles at the ground. Yet.
Poor boy, doesn't know his own magic.
Sick Willie's tone tips the edge of teasing into malicious, and Kyle flushes with abrupt rage. The nearest traffic lights flash red.
No license. Not even a learner's permit.
When you get one, Harriman ignores Willie, you keep it current. Don't want to end up like him. The cop gestures vaguely upwards and Kyle follows the movement. The high-rise ascends through the glow from street lamps, headlights and shop windows clustering its base, sides tapering toward the darkened sky. But somewhere between the scored facade and the stars, an uneven rampart of cement breaks the symmetry of the building. The concrete barrier poured to fill elevator shafts and stairwells and separate the top 2 floors from the lower 13 bursts out through windows to distend the structure's silhouette like a wide, ugly tank trap. Above, lights twinkle from the windows on the occupied floors, and a flag containing a single black top hat on a background of red shimmers, flutters in a spotlit halo. You mean Kierzig? Griffin blinks at the flag. What does the magician have to do with you hassling us?
Why do you think he's up there?
Sick Willie surprises everyone by answering for the cop.
Nightside's most powerful infernal doing stage magic because he forgot to renew his license. If he uses real magic, he'll do a stretch in Foulgate, right?
This last, directed at Harriman, is spoken in a disconcertingly adult tone. Harriman does not answer. Instead, he fingers his lighter, looks from the dumpster fouled in yellow police tape up to the lit windows of the magician's penthouse, then back to the dumpster again. Whoever dumped that corpse knows their way around a hex. Harriman points from Sick Willie to Griffin to the short Fruel in oversized shoes and a blue robe trudging past, dragging his magic bag behind him. Fluxers, Quansters, Fruels. The pear-shaped man sets down his bag by the dumpster. Nightside has more kinds of magic than you can shake a stick at, and the magician knows them all. Knows them all. Kyle's breath leaves his body in a windy rush. For the first time since childhood, he feels the giddy exhilaration of living free of a burden that has long plagued him. He shivers and thinks the word freedom. But he knows he'll have to move cautiously because of the risk involved. Take his time. So he conceals his excitement, watching the Fruel as he speaks. Is the magician a suspect? I can't answer that. Harriman's lip press into a line, and he watches the Fruel unloop his bag, bend, and hand over hand begin pulling out an impossibly long butterfly net. A squawk splits the air. The Fruel freezes, slowly turns. Then, raising the net high over his head, he sprints in the direction of the hex's screech. Outsized shoes slapping the pavement, the moons and stars on his robe fluttering as he vanishes into the shadows. But I'd be lying if I said no. Harriman grins sourly, dismisses them with a wave. Orange firelight burnishes the roof of the underpass. Kyle studies the flames and listens to the tired hiss of cars on the rain-washed streets above. Streets teeming with humans and infernals, and all the wondrous magic of Nightside. Fluxers, Quansters, Fruels. Glances over to where Griff and Sick Willie huddle below a tarp on a pile of used tires, secure in the knowledge of their own personal magic, their dreams untroubled by doubt. Kyle has been friends with them for a long time. Together they have experienced all the adventures to be had in the chasm between childhood and young adulthood, observed the rites of passage, grown and changed with them, but now... Yeah, Kyle, figured out your kind of magic yet?
Poor boy, doesn't know his own magic.
His friends have left him behind. Kyle grits his teeth at the hot bubble of frustration tightening in his chest. It's not fair, he thinks. Not fair. All around, it seems the world is moving on, the way his friends have, and yet he remains locked in a soundless stillness. The kind you sometimes experience on a country road at autumn, when you stand still just before dusk and feel the evening settling. The stillness is overwhelming, and Kyle feels on the brink of breaking when Harriman's words return to him, along with the memory of giddy exhilaration and burdens lost. Nightside has more kinds of magic than you can shake a stick at, and the magician knows them all. All. Soundlessly, Kyle rises and begins making his way back toward the city. The acoustics of the concrete stairwell magnify sounds 10-fold, 100-fold as Kyle climbs. His breath, his footsteps, the squeak of his hand on the steel railing reverberate, echoing up and down the depths of the great man-made cavern as he rises floor upon floor toward the magician's penthouse. I must be crazy, he thinks. The raw magnitude of the magician's sorcery is so powerful, the force of his will such that he must avoid contact with others, spend the majority of his time locked up in this tower, lest he bend the world to his will with a stray thought. The light from improvised torches causes the spiral sigils and vaguely sinister runes inscribed on the walls to flicker and undulate like dancing demons. Kyle pauses, stares up into the half-lit darkness, then plods on. A firefly glow on the landing far above. Kyle concentrates on it as he mounts step after step. Gradually, the glow broadens until it defines the stairwell in a foliage of shadows. The rhythm of Kyle's feet slow as he mounts the last set of stairs to a landing marked with a large number 13 painted on the wall in black. A ragged wall of cement chokes the stairwell leading up. The landing itself, lit by an improvised candelabra of paraffin-filled tin cans, is empty, save for a young barefoot woman in a red evening gown who sits reading a book in a chair. She glances up at Kyle, slips a black ribbon between the pages, and leaves the leather-bound volume on the seat behind her as she rises. How do you enter the flames, child? She asks. Kyle glances down at the charred outline of a pentagram on the landing floor. It's the only way forward. The girl takes up a single candle and holds it in her right hand, beckoning him with her left. Monsieur Kierzig, the magician, will see you now. He has been expecting you. Kyle walks the concrete landing and crosses into the pentagram, haunted by images of blackened arms reaching up through black bags of garbage. He wonders if Kim, if Trad, came here. An irrational thought, I'm not a girl, so I'm safe, wars with recognition of his peril. This woman has power over the fire elemental, obvious from her dress, from the practiced way in which she coaxes and balances and teases the flame of the candle in her hand as she wields it. She crosses to the edge of the pentagram. Why have you come to ride the flame? She does not blink as she watches Kyle, awaiting a reply. I need to know what kind of magic is mine. The only way to find out is to do. Her smile is infinitely sinister, infinitely gentle. But how do I know what to do unless somebody tells me? The girl's eyes widen in momentary surprise before she bends, touching the candle flame to the circumference of the shape on the landing floor, and Kyle is consumed by sheets of flame. Tell me, Kyle, do you know why magicians wear gloves? An orange glow crawls from the fireplace, the one through which Kyle entered the room, and grasps the shadowed furniture in coppery fingers. The magician's study is appointed in 18th century style. Lamps with tasseled shades, an escritoire, statuettes and gewgaws crowding tables accented by deeply filigreed coverings. The half-light from the fire suffuses the decor in a cozy glow behind high-closed draperies. No idea? Kyle shakes his head, slightly dazed after his trip through the flames. The purpose of the gloves, the magician settles himself in a thickly padded armchair, is to prevent us singeing our fingers in the primordial fire. I can see why you wear them. Fire is everywhere here. Fire cleanses. The magician flicks lint from the crease of his pants, adjusts the button of his tuxedo jacket. Fire refines. Fire kills. Kyle stares down at his own hands, remembering the charred and blackened ones, reaching up toward him from the dumpster's depths. It can. So you are interested in discovering what kind of magic is yours. Such a question suggests an imbalance, a violation of the first rule. Tea? The magician leans closer, proffering a ceramic pot exuding a slightly burnt aroma. Kyle shakes his head and frowns. Indeed. The magician replaces the pot on the tray, puts his hands on his knees. As above, so below. Or conversely, as within, so without. That you might need someone to tell you what sort of magic is yours is ridiculous. Then how will I know? Magic begins when we cease looking for answers from others and start creating our own. You're not the first to come courting such questions. Did you know a girl named Trad? Kim? Because names are unimportant, I never remember them. Identities are what interest me. They're dead. Then they are in good company. The magician's fingers waggle a droll salute at the brim of his top hat. The majority of those who have inhabited this planet are dead. Death, like names, apparently does not interest him. Their bodies were burned. The magician's answering stillness is like a cat's, and Kyle's is that of a bird. Whoever killed them had magic, enough to bypass a hex. Perhaps your magic lies in seeking answers. The magician smiles thinly. I have languished in this tower 8 years now. Perhaps you can tell me why. Because you can't do magic without a license. Pfft! A man no more needs a license to do magic than he needs magic to bypass a hex, a charm. Some personal object or fetish enchanted by a fool would do the trick. No. Your ability to plumb for answers is weak. That is plainly not your magic. And yours is fire? Mine is truth. Mine is truth, which can be like fire. The magician speaks moodily to the hearth. Truth immolates, consumes, strips things down to the bare, ugly skeleton. Fall in love with the truth, boy, and you will be alone, and the lonely have a penchant for drastic action. Kyle has had enough. He starts looking for a door. But of course there is none. He remembers how he got here. As he turns back towards the hearth, he catches sight of the magician grinning, a rictus grin. Leave now, and you'll never learn the answer. You said I shouldn't ask, but create my own answer. By following your natural inclinations, yes. I want to create mine somewhere else. 'Kay? The magician smiles. How do you enter the flames, child? It occurs to Kyle this is the only time the magician has asked a question. How do you enter the flames, boy? How? Nightside is ringed by a series of parks. These abandoned recreational areas serve as a buffer between infernal territory and the city's human population. If you look out the windows to the left, you'll see one such park. Note the dismantled playground equipment, much of it scavenged for parts. Whether infernal youth ever use these areas is a matter of speculation. Speaking personally, I've never seen any when guiding these tours, but that's always during the day. Night is falling now, and it's usually best to leave this area of the city before it gets too dark. Kyle descends the wide, greasy slope as dusk buries the dying day in the sandboxes of the abandoned park. Charter buses and private vehicles choke the off-ramps into Nightside, bearing the evening's tide of visitors eager to sample illicit delights. It has been this way ever since Kyle can remember. Humans, repelled and secretly fascinated by his kind. Ordinarily, Kyle would be chiseling some cash for himself from the flow of commerce, but instead he angles toward the playground through the concrete-colored gloom. This sector of the city stills, but Kyle's inner turmoil does not. Alone, still a kid, he fights the storm of tears inside his chest. No magic of my own. By the bars of a jungle gym, weathered silver by rain and neglect, Sick Willie and Griff wheedle for the attention of a teenage girl. She beams at Kyle as he approaches. 17 and vaguely hippie-ish, in a knitted Rasta toque and worn jeans. It is a smile Kyle is too demoralized to return. Willie's and Griff's glances toward him are, by contrast, perfunctory, mildly irritated. Kyle's anger chafes the edge of his profound fatigue. He knows where this is going, can sense the tiresome role he has been cast to play in the upcoming social drama, so he rehearses the mental stages of his leave-taking. Already gone, dismissing the new girl as she stands, one hand on the strap of her hemp bag, examining him as he nears. Kyle, this is Jada from Westside.
Aye and aye,
Jada blinks sleepily.
I be come for to escape the downpression of Babylon, man.
Kyle blinks. Jada is very white. She's interested in our local crop. Griffin, unable to hide his interest in Jada, jams his hands in his pockets while his eyes climb all over her. A process that continues unabated except for the occasional warning glance shot Kyle's way.
The magic ganj,
Jada nods.
They say seeds get put in I ground, man, and I speak a chant over they.
A grower. Sick Willie takes a puff on his cig, hands it to Griffin. Yeah.
Very sought after among Idrin of Ra.
Can't you speak like a normal person? Snaps Kyle. His anguish floods any guilt he may feel for being mean to a pretty girl. He suddenly doesn't care if he is liked, if he is accepted, if the way he acts puts him at war with the world. He just wants to break things, hurt things, push people out of his way. He wants to be gone. I don't belong here. Kyle glares from watchful Willie to a wary Griffin. It occurs to him that they aren't really his friends. First chance they get, they're going to tear me down in front of her. So what am I even doing here? He clenches his teeth, exhales sharply, whirls and stalks away. What's his problem? Griffin's question skates a bubble of laughter. No, Willie. Hey, let him. But a moment later, Sick Willie's hand, a male one, is on Kyle's arm, yanking him to a stop.
Kyle, what?
Oh, you're going to give me the business about how I don't know what my scratching? He rips his elbow free. Magic is, huh? Or maybe give Jada the lecture all about how I've never had a girlfriend. Huh? You scratching fucks or freak? Just go ahead and do it once, Willie. I'll smash your scratching face. I've had it with you. Willie's face, his real one, tightens in shock.
Hey, Kyle, he speaks softly. No, we're...
You're what? Not my friends, that's for sure. Kyle spits. We are so done. I'm out of here. You go have fun with your Trustafarian. This is bleak. Scratch this. I'm leaving to go get a job and live among the humans.
There'll be nothing out there.
So? I'm nothing here. What's the diff? Kyle is 3 steps away when Willie catches his arm again.
Okay, man. Hey, okay, look.
Willie backs off when Kyle turns. Willie holds both palms out.
At least let us give you a going-away present, yeah? A bag to take with you. Seriously, on us.
Kyle breathes, mastering his tidal rage. The relief promised by a nice bag of weed is tempting. And free? The street kid within him can't resist. Kyle has a line on a job as a night janitor in an office building on the edge of Nightside. He plans to lose himself in solitary work, pushing a mop across silent floors at 2 a.m. After all the jagged emotions of the past days, imagining himself returning home at dawn to light up a nice stick of magic weed is too seductive to pass up. So he nods curtly and falls into step with Willie. Free dope, he tells himself. Free. A sleepy-eyed fool, fat toes poking out from beneath his frayed robe, waits by his grow patch behind the maintenance shed. He blinks at them as they approach. The earth is bountiful. The earth is just. He speaks between tokes of a thick joint, sliding one bloodshot eye toward Jada. Even to they not of magic kin. She's not the only one, ribbon bearer. Griffin glares boldly at the length of red silk the fool received upon his exile from the Mage Guild that he must, by law, wear wrapped around his peaked magician's cap. We're here for a bag. We have money. Griffin steps protectively between the fool and the Rasta girl. The fool laughs. Money, money, a multitude of evils. As I recall, last time you came, you had money too, and a different girlie. Your money didn't help her neither. The fool's gaze drops to the mouth of the tunnel, visible through a break in the skimpy foliage. A bag costs 10, pay up front. As Griffin settles with the grower, Jada, her Rasta can't forgotten, asks Willie, what's he talking about? What other girl? Nothing. Sick Willie pulls Jada to the edge of the flower bed. The grower has begun poking seeds into the soil. Strange, Kyle thinks, how both of the dead girls were with Griff and Sick Willie before they... Shouts behind them. Kyle looks up to see a flash of blue. Harriman, one hand on his belt, the other gripping the radio mic at his shoulder, sprinting along the path toward the tunnel where they found Kim's body, followed closely by another cop. The grower's gravelly incantation, meanwhile, peaks on a gasp. The first green tendrils crawl up from the soil and arc skyward. 10 breaths later, a mature bush, ripe with sticky buds, balloons into being. The grower leans in, begins plucking and dropping buds into a paper bag. Ja, love? Jada's voice balloons with wonder. A crackle of radio static. Harriman emerges from the tunnel, leading the magician, cuffed in platinum. The female cop follows behind, leading a miniature hound as it struggles to rush up and sniff the magician's pant cuffs. Kierzig had apparently been out walking his dog. Guess they got their killer. Griffin accepts the bag, fishes out 2 buds, then thrusts the rest at Kyle. Well, that's that. We're gonna go get high now. Wanna come? No. Adios, then. Griffin tosses a wry salute before he, Willie, and Jada amble toward the tunnel. Kyle stuffs the bag into a pocket alongside the strip of paper with the phone number of the janitorial service. That's it, then, he thinks. No more Nightside. He realizes he just doesn't care. Pushing away the pang of guilt that yawns within him, he tells himself, just want to get moving, get that job, get on to the next thing. He jams his hands into his pockets and bears for the edge of the park. He glances over and sees Harriman push the magician into the back of a patrol car. He feels indifference as he watches the cop's curiosity peak upon seeing a thread of pot smoke rise from the tunnel mouth. Their problem. Harriman begins advancing on the tunnel as Kyle reaches the bus stop, roots in his pockets for change. He forces himself not to look as the patrol car containing the magician and Harriman's partner pulls from the curb and Harriman vanishes into the tunnel. Stillness. No one is visible. Kyle scans for the bus. Scratch. And suddenly he is sprinting back into the park, hoping speed will compensate for his indifference of a moment before. He isn't quite sure what he plans to do, but he feels he must do something to prevent his friend's bust. But the park stretches for an impossible distance, and Kyle can't seem to cross it no matter how much he lengthens his strides. He hears a ripping sound. Either that or a snap, he isn't sure. The tunnel mouth is the size of a dime, then a nickel, and it stays a nickel for a long time, until Kyle realizes he's holding his breath, hearing his heartbeat, Footsteps. Then a hollow metallic echo from within. Realize they're second-class citizens, right? And have to stay that way. Good of all of us. Harriman. Kyle reaches the mouth, bends with his hands on his knees, and breathes with his lips wide to hide his gasping. When he is calmer, he cranes around the edge. Griffin lies prone, half in shadow, unnaturally still. It takes Kyle a moment to realize that he's been shot. That snapping noise. A thin, dark river, blood, runs from Griffin's thigh to where Sick Willie stands hunched, secured to a drain pipe with Harriman's platinum handcuffs. Willie's clothing is ripped, and his shoulders are hunched with extra weight. Wings. Willie had been caught and taken under control by Harriman in mid-transformation into some hawk-like creature. Skanky little trollops like you come down here and treat them like they're rock stars or something, and they forget. Forget. They're the underclass. Harriman has something in his hand. The lighter. Kyle sees. His damn lighter. When Sick Willie stirs, Harriman waves the object at him, and he shrinks back, cowed. A man no more needs a license to do magic than he needs magic to bypass a hex. It comes to Kyle. The dead girls. Harriman's omnipresence and intimate knowledge of the crimes. Harriman's hatred of the infernals. A body stashed in a hexed dumpster, and the policeman's ever-present lighter. A charm. Some personal object or fetish enchanted by a fool would do the trick. The fetish charmed to give him immunity from magic, and enabled him to bypass the hex, get the drop on Griffin, take control of Sick Willie. Harriman. Harriman is the killer. Jada's arm is extended before her. Kyle glimpses silver, a knife. Harriman is indifferent to its glimmering point switching back and forth in the tunnel's shadow like a steel firefly, intent on delivering his rebuke to the masses for daring to treat infernals as equals. Don't know why you kids admire them so. Harriman glances down at the fallen Griffin, the chained Willie. They're not all that powerful. Or extraordinary, you know. With a movement that is almost casual, Harriman slips inside Jada's guard and backhands her. She slams the tunnel wall, a howl of breath exploding from her throat as Harriman scoops up the dropped knife. Kyle's spirits spiral into oblivion, like a plug pulled on a bathtub full of hope. Our fighter's down. Kyle glances from the prone Griffin to Willie. And cuffed in platinum, our fluxer can't shift into a creature powerful enough to fight Harriman, which leaves... Kyle examines Harriman's strong back as he bends over Jada, securing her to the wall with a second pair of handcuffs, and shivers. I don't even know my own magic. Then he remembers. Your natural inclinations. Kyle steps from the shadows. Harriman is about to speak again when he notes the movement, turns, and drops his hand to his gun. Then he recognizes Kyle and relaxes. Well, if it isn't the little freak with no license. Harriman's smile is wintry, closer to human than any of them, but you're still an infernal. Racially, anyway, even if you can't pull a rabbit out of a hat. And you're still a cop, even if you kill people. Kyle manages to keep his voice calm. Yeah, I kill people. Harriman's words drip with disgust. People who think you guys are special. People who treat you as equals instead of the parasites you really are. I'm doing a public service. Because what happens when these little girls grow up and have kids? They start teaching to think that you infernals, you freaks, are no different from us, huh? We'll never know. Coiled rage tightens within Kyle, and his voice firms up. We'll never know, because they're dead. Same way you'll be soon. Harriman turns back to Jada. Sit down. No. And as Harriman turns back, his angry response, what? Waiting unspoken on his lips, Kyle bends and takes up a cigarette butt, transforms it into a geranium, and extends it to Harriman. "Flowers for the dead," Kyle says. His voice is stone. Kyle knows he himself may be about to join their ranks, but he doesn't care. Something about fighting the injustice of this is more important than his own life. He remembers Trad, sweet, streetwise, tough, but still beautiful. Her thin face and wide eyes radiating a femininity that was breathtaking. Like a rose, growing in a dumpster. As Kyle imagines her now, he closes his eyes, wondering, what would she be like had she lived? And his imagination lends detail to that question. A wrinkle here, a gray hair there, a slight tightening of the skin around the cheekbones as she aged. And opening his eyes, he finds his image made real, just as he had with the she-hex. A mature Trad standing beside Jada holding a child. Trad is older, tired from the effort of bringing this life into being into the world. A tiny, perfect baby reaching out from her turquoise blanket with precious, clumsy hands. Tired, yes, as she gazes down at her child, but for all that, stunningly beautiful. "Trad," Kyle smiles. Harriman gazes nervously at the shade. "See what beauty you rob the world of, you bleak, scratching freak." Rage for this lost loveliness thunders within Kyle. He summons the image of Kim, the doomed human girl, first to die. As with Trad, her image appears aged. Laugh lines. Thinner hair, shoulders a little more slumped. But the gleam in her eyes, the confident smile, the chalk dusting in her right hand, tinging the frayed cuffs of her pantsuit. A teacher. Kim would have been a great teacher, reached hundreds of kids, taught them that society's war on the infernals was nothing but prejudice and economics gift-wrapped as public safety. In the 60s it was the blacks, in the 70s it was women, in the 80s and 90s it was gays, and now, enough. Harriman barks at Kyle. Jada completely forgotten. "Bleeding heart liberal crap. They died. I killed them and they deserve to." To die? Kyle's rage is monumental. That any person, human or infernal, would presume to rob the world of life. "Monster, you are such a scratcher." The last word, delivered on a whisper, is somehow more menacing than the scream it was building toward. Now all the white-hot anger within Kyle flows from his body in a bright ribbon of energy, compelled by his rage, by his imagination and intent. And suddenly out of the darkness, another shape starts to form. Harriman squints. "Mandy?" Harriman's whisper emerges the same moment the shape coalesces into visibility. A teenage girl. Dark hair, dark eyes, something in the tilt of her chin, the shape of her cheek, so like those of the policeman holding the knife. "How do you know what my daughter looks like?" Kyle's lip curls into a frown, and he concentrates the intent of his projection, casting all of his emotion into a feeling that blasts outward in a jet of flame, and suddenly the image of Harriman's daughter is burning. "No!" Screams fill the tunnel. An illusion, but so realistic that Harriman cannot help lunging the distance between them, dropping to his knees, reaching through the fire. "Mandy! Mandy!" Harriman's bare arms swat the flames. He is too panicked to notice how they pass through, unharmed, even as his daughter is consumed. "Son of a... Make it stop, you sick demon!" Kyle, fists clenched, merely stands his ground and shakes his head once. Harriman scrabbles at his holster. "You monster!" He yanks free his service pistol and jams it towards Kyle. "Stop!" And Kyle twists the intensity of his feelings, tipping them over the edge of malice toward hatred, and watches with grim satisfaction as the flames balloon and the shrieks rise, and Harriman, unable to take any more, turns the barrel of his gun to his own head and... "There's that scratching tour bus again." Kyle looks up from his place beside Jada. Spelled out in coins in front of them on the sidewalk are the letters M, K, E, L, O, E. The chugging, silver-skinned vehicle rumbles past. Faintly through the open windows they hear, "Moved here because of restrictions on their access to employment, welfare, housing, and health care. Addiction and violence remain ongoing concerns." Jada calls to a passing woman, "Hey, want to help us make love on the sidewalk?" The woman, hair swaddled beneath a kerchief and her face wrapped by thick sunglasses, sneers before turning away and pushing forward through the crowd. A thick-set man in a gray business suit notes the dismissal, shakes his head, then hands 2 quarters to Jada. "You nice kids get yourself something to eat, okay?" "Ja, love," she says, and uses the quarters to start the apex of the A in make. Sick Willie takes a seat beside them. "Look it," unfolding a scrap of paper from his pocket. An article from that morning's paper. Local cop arrested for murders. Suspect Kierzig released. Griffin's lips move as he reads the headline silently to himself over Willie's shoulder. So it ends. He drops his cigarette butt, crushes it. "You staying?" he asks Kyle. "Yeah." "Good." As Griffin walks away, Kyle picks up the smoldering cigarette butt, transforms it into a geranium. "Oh, pretty!" Jada reaches for it. "No." Kyle pulls it from her grasp. "That's not for you."
Magic never solves every problem in fiction. It causes plenty and can counteract some, but things always linger. Things like prejudice, poverty, and murder. Human instincts don't go away because someone can now change the laws of physics. If anything, they can intensify, crystallize, or be clung to as that which separates us from them. As we live through a situation on the borders of dystopia, it's little surprise that many take solace in the glossy veneer of magic and its tendency, at least in a lot of fantasy fiction, to clean up the place. Magic offers no such promise for Kyle and Willie and Griff. They're street kids, using what small advantages they have to make a life for themselves in a society which forces them to the margins, to be preyed upon. Which is why I remember so much and I love Kyle's geraniums. Small, trivial, defiant acts. Kyle knows he can't solve everything. He hasn't even figured out himself yet. But what he can do is create one beautiful thing, solve one mystery, bring one soul peace. That's our story. Join us again next week. Cast of Wonders loves bringing you the best audio fiction week after week. But to do so, we need your support. Please consider supporting Cast of Wonders with a monthly donation through PayPal, Patreon, or Ko-fi. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please consider the stories we publish during award season. There are lots of ways you can help boost our signal. Join the discussion on the EA forum, forum.escapeartist.net, or visit us on Twitter at Cast of Wonders and come say hello. Cast of Wonders is a production of Escape Artists Incorporated and is brought to you by editor Catherine Inskip, assistant editors Andrew K. Ho and Carissa Sluss, associate editor team Tonya Bespalco, Amy Brennan, Alicia Capriasso, Trace Von Teal, William Height Minor, Sean Proctor, Ray O, Susie Rodriguez, Emma Smales, and Chris Tang. Art director is Alexis Goebel. Our community manager is Danny Daly, and our audio producer is Jeremy Carter. And I've been your guest host today, Marguerite Kenner. Our episodes are released under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Non-Derivatives 4.0 International License. That means you can download or listen to the episode on any device you like, but you can't change it or sell it. Our theme music is Appeal to Heavens by Alexei Nov, available from Promo DJ or his Facebook page. Thanks for listening.